So Stuart, a lot of churches are wanting to use a drum set in their worship, which is understandable. It's kind of a key part of modern music. But I feel like, I hate to even say the trends are changing, but I feel like a lot of things are changing, and I wanted to talk a little bit about like what kind of drum kits that you like to look for when people are asking for recommendations. Like, are we still in the age where we need to go buy a really nice $1,500, $2,000 touring kit and a full drum cage and all these things? Or has some of that technology changed a little bit?
Well, again, like I always say, it does depend on your scenario.
No doubt.
The big thing, first question I would ask is, it depends on your drummer.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So like, I remember I used to go on tour with a couple guys, and I'd play drums, and we were in a lot of small to medium churches, like way out in the middle of Wyoming or wherever. And I always brought a kick drum, a snare, and a couple cymbals with me. And they saw me bringing in these drums and like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
These little
and I
churches.
would always have to say, just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait till you hear our sound.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine. And I would most of the time play with brushes, maybe some hot rods or something.
Sure.
But you always played to the room.
Yeah.
So the first step would be, what's your vibe? Is your drummer capable of playing to the room? All that kind of stuff. That would determine the type of kit and whether or not you did some sort of surround room situation. So I think maybe the first thing to address would be, you see a lot of drums on stages and you see some sort of thing around them.
Yeah.
If you just have this up, just one of these up, that's just preventing the sound from hitting the vocal mics. It's not bringing the volume down.
Definitely
in the room.
not bringing it down.
It's just turning these mics, like let's say this is a vocal mic, it's just preventing it from being an overhead.
Yeah, it's putting like a wall.
Yeah, as a wall. If you make a room out of it, where you have a top on it, you're basically building a room. Now you're enclosing it and isolating the sound.
But it never reduces the sound as much as people think it will.
Yeah, it's low frequency likes to go everywhere. I mean, have you ever been in an intersection with somebody with a loud, subs coming out of their car?
Yeah.
You can't hear any of the high end, but you hear all of that stuff going on. Anyway, that's a totally different topic. Yep. But when you're choosing a drum set, I think the first step is figuring out what the drummer wants. Then that really determines, what kind of kit you want to get. The other thing is do you want to go electric or do you want to go acoustic? And electric drum sets are pretty awesome these days. And if you're in a small space, I really highly recommend it.
It's kind of like our discussion that we had on in-ears was like people think if we're using in-ears, we have an upgraded experience.
Sure.
People feel that way about acoustic drum sets. If we're using acoustic drum sets, we're having an upgraded experience.
Well, think about it. So if you've got an acoustic kit and you got to have it tuned, let's say, there's a lot of steps here. And a lot
of steps that get overlooked.
Yes. And so let's just say you're a volunteer sound tech and team and all that stuff. So first off, you got to pick a drum set. You got to have it tuned. You got to have it mic'd. You got to have it EQ'd correctly in the sound system. You have to have the proper baffling or whatever you're needing.
And then your drummer needs to actually
and then the drummer needs to hit it in a certain way. Or you can just bypass all that.
Yep.
And have an electric kit. And a lot of these modern electric kits don't sound like what you think.
Yeah.
They don't sound like cheese.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
A lot better.
And a lot of them have multi outputs.
So you can still process each thing as if it was a different mic.
The kick can be processed as a kick. The snare is a snare, and hi-hats and all that stuff. So it's come a long ways, and they sound really, really good. And if you think about the overall picture, you're a volunteer sound person. Do you really have the ability to reproduce acoustic drums in an acoustic way where they're going to sit in the mix really nice? If the answer is no, then maybe an electric kit is the way to go. Now, your drummer might not want to use an electric kit, and that's where you kind of have to you have to feel it out because I've had to have some serious conversation with drummers. Like, listen, your preference versus the entire experience. Like, does your preference really? Are you really going to hinder this entire experience? So there's a lot of things to unpack. But let's just say we're talking acoustic kits for a minute. So, like, I've got a little Tama kit that's just little. I mean, the floor tom is this deep.
Right.
You know, it's like a 14 by something.
Yeah.
And then you've got a small little rack tom, average size snare, and then the kick drum is not very big.
Right.
And it has a little bit of a small sound, but it's cool sounding.
When it's tuned up correctly, it sounds good.
And then I've got really nice cymbals.
Yeah.
That are very smooth sounding. I could take that anywhere. I could go and use it on a big stage. I could use it on a little tiny room, and you just play to the room. So, but if you're looking for that big rock sound, then maybe you want a big, 10-ply maple kit. Maybe you want to go the custom route and get like a, I don't know, DW or something. It just kind of depends on the style you're looking for and your drummer.
One of the most important factors I think you as the worship leader or the sound guy need to consider is, do you have a real drummer who's going to take it seriously? Are they saying they want an acoustic kit just because they think that's what they need to have? Or are they going to own that kit? And I don't mean they personally pay for it, but if you're going to have an acoustic drum set in your church, somebody needs to take ownership of it. They need to tune it regularly, change the heads, ensure that everything's operating correctly. If they do that, I do think you're going to get really good results every week.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is drums don't play themselves. So we've all done festivals. Mm-hmm. We actually did sound outside of church for many years. And the one thing I noticed when I would run front of house for festivals is we'd have a backline kit.
It's the same drum set.
Same exact all day long.
You have many different drummers on it.
It's wild how different sounding those kits would sound. And I would know that sometimes they'd swap out the snare and the cymbals. Right. But it matters how you hit each instrument, each drum really drastically matters.
And that's what I was getting at. So if you don't have a drummer who really owns drumming, maybe you have just a volunteer or a kid who doesn't know exactly what they're doing, electric drum sets are going to be more forgiving all the time. It does not matter what angle your stick hits the drum at. Mm-hmm. It sounds professional every time. So electric drum sets are going to be way more forgiving if you've got much more volunteer, less experienced drummers.